my whole life changed after I hit that joint. It felt like I stepped into another dimension. The vision of it, I guess, per se, like my perception of reality was just altered. It felt like this film over my eyes. It felt like someone put saran wrap over my face. I kept thinking, am I going to be like this forever? Am I going to be like this forever?
Hey everyone, I'm Sean O'Connor, author of the Depersonalization Manual, and today I'm speaking with Austin Adams from St. Louis, Missouri. Austin is 23 years old. He first developed DPDR last year, triggered by a bad weed experience. Over the next year or so, he struggled with the symptoms of depersonalization and derealization disorder, in particular those related to memory and vision. But thankfully, he has since made a complete recovery, and Austin is with us today to talk about his experience with and recovery from DPDR. Austin, you're very welcome to the channel. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Sean.
A pleasure. It's a pleasure, man. Austin, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So I am 23 years old. I live out in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm a mechanic. I love to ride motorcycles, drive cars, build cars, stuff like that.
Nice. And you were saying earlier you were in the army at some point?
Yes, I was. 3 years. I got in when I was 17. It was a good and bad experience. I mean, just like a regular 9 to 5 job, especially my job was infantry, which is 11 Bravo in the military world. So yeah, I mean, it had its days.
Can you tell us a bit about your experience with DPDR, Austin, and how did it start for you?
Of course. So it was October of last year, 2022. So my girlfriend and her family went out to Las Vegas, Nevada for her 30th birthday. And so there's a dispensary over there. It's called Plant 13. It's supposed to be one of the biggest dispensaries in the world. So I was like, yeah, I'll check it out. So, I mean, I've smoked marijuana before. I would smoke it every day. I felt like it was my antidepressant. And so I was like, okay, so I didn't have a problem with it. So when we got there, I asked, we were talking to the clerk and stuff, and I was like, look, I'm looking for something maybe like 5% THC, maybe like a couple of percent CBD. And he's like, yeah, I got you. And he ended up selling me a 15% THC roll without my recollection. And we got back to the hotel room, and we just wanted to smoke. So we went back down to the lobby, and my whole life changed after I hit that joint. It's like, I don't know how to explain it. We went back through the lobby and through the casino and everything. It felt like I stepped into another dimension per se. I was just really high, and I was really paranoid. And I tried to just chill out, take some deep breaths, drink some water, but it just seemed like nothing worked. So we got back to the hotel room, and I just started panicking really, really bad. I was throwing up. I was crying, and I felt like I was dying. And I told my girlfriend at the time, I was like, you need to call an ambulance right now. I think I'm dying, on marijuana. And as ridiculous as that sounds, it felt so surreal. It felt like my heart was beating out of my chest. Like it felt like it was like, I don't know. Have you ever watched Looney Tunes?
Yeah.
Or where you can actually see the physical heart? That's how it felt like.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend's like, calm down. You need to lay down. You need to just chill out. It's okay. It's okay. And I tried to, but it just, nothing was working. And I got to the point where I tried to stick my head in the freezer to like sober up a little bit. And now that when it started to die down a little bit, when I finally realized I wasn't dying, I laid down, watched TV until I fell asleep. Now, the next morning is when it got really interesting. It was the night before we had to leave, so we left the room, and it just seems like everything just felt so weird. Like I couldn't put my finger on it, and I was like, maybe I'm just still high. I had a really intense weed experience. Maybe I'm just I'm still high, and it happened all day. Like the vision, the fogginess, and it's just the vision of it, I guess, per se. Like my perception of reality was just altered, it felt like. And I got to so we got in the limousine, we got to the airport, and when we got on the plane, I had another anxiety attack. I'm like, what the heck? I don't normally have anxiety attacks. Like I'm I've been on a plane I countless of times, and I don't know why I'm panicking. And I just, listened to music, I chilled out, whatever, and it finally passed. And then everything just seemed it seemed fine for a second. Like for the past couple days, it just seemed fine. Felt like I was back to normal. And all of a sudden it hit me again. And I didn't know what was up. I'm like, man, what the heck? So I got back to work, and it was a dead of winter where I stay out now. And you know how they say, like, seasonal depression, it gets more intense during the wintertime when it snows. And so I was working at a dealership at the time, and I I don't know, it just seemed like everything just set me off. No matter what someone said, I would just start just crying, bawling my eyes out for no reason. It felt like, and like I kept thinking, am I going to be like this forever? Am I going to be like this forever? Now rewind to when I thought I was still high. It was a couple days after that when you know I felt fine, and then the symptoms hit me again. Like, okay, like I didn't smoke weed. What the heck? And I don't know how to explain it. It was just I got into this state of just sheer panic, and I to the point where I felt like it was going to ruin my relationship because of the fact that I felt weak as a man, and I was crying every single day for it just felt like all day, like all day I was just crying and panicking and everything. I just fell into this big depression that I felt like I couldn't get out of, and I had to force myself to do certain things. Um, but let's see, it was like maybe 3 weeks that I found your channel. I kept researching it, and so I'm a very spiritual person, and I have this app on my phone, and it what it does, it measures your like a spiritual path thing. And so it was saying something about you're going through a hard time right now. It's like a horoscope, and it said you're going through a hard time right now. This might be an intense experience and may last up to 7 years. And I instantly flew off my handle. I was like, man, I cannot do this for 7 years. And I just started to lose my mind, it felt like. And I didn't know what to do. Um but yeah, so it was like 3 weeks after everything, I found your channel, and I was reading about it and stuff, and you were telling me that it was just DP and DR, and you were explaining it. I'm like, no, this is bull crap. I got something different. So I went to a doctor, and I was telling him my symptoms, and he prescribed me medication. He was like, man, you're just going through anxiety. I'm like, no, you're wrong, doctor. How did you get your license? This and that. I'm like, you're wrong. I don't have anxiety. Something else is different. I feel like I'm losing my memory. Like I feel like I'm losing my mind. Like my vision's all wonky and I don't know what to do. Like I've seen an optometrist, they said nothing's wrong. I'm like, what the heck? So he prescribed me the medication. I was taking them daily. I mean, it was helping a little bit, but when I was watching your videos, it just each time I was watching it, I felt more relatable to the condition because you were naming off all these other symptoms that I had. And at the time, I ended up quitting my job because of the whole condition, because I felt like I was going to mess something up on someone's vehicle. So I was like, okay, I have to get this book. I have to get this book. I After reading it, like maybe the first paragraph, I felt instantly better. Like instantly. It was instant. And I was just so psyched, and I kept reading and kept reading and kept reading and listening to the audio and just following the golden rules to a T. And it seemed like after like a week or so, it slowly started to get better. And it got to the point where I I I, I felt back to normal for a little bit. And then I just kept going and kept going. And I had some minor setbacks, but I kept going, and here I am, a couple years, well, not a couple years, but a year later, feeling better than I was before when I had DP and DR. It's a miracle. I don't know how to explain it.
That's great that you recovered, Austin. I'm so happy to hear it. And it's quite a story, and it's such a common thing as well. I mean, it's basically the same thing that happened to me, and it's I think it's a lot more common than people think. So you said, and you had like smoked weed in the past before the incident in Las Vegas, Austin. Had you ever had any experiences like that beforehand, where you had like properly kind of greened out or had a panic attack or anything like that?
It wasn't that intense. It was. See, I smoked weed before. I remember one time where I greened out, but it wasn't as bad as Vegas. Um, it was I was still really panicky and stuff. I'm so high, like I gotta chill out. But it wasn't that bad as 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 Vegas. Like Vegas was a whole new experience, it felt like.
Yeah, yeah. I would have had something similar as well. I mean, I would have had like not great experiences, or had not great experiences with weed. And then it was when I went to Amsterdam. We need to stop going to these places, Austin. Just don't go to Amsterdam or Las Vegas. But it was when I went to Amsterdam and smoked a joint that was, it was multiple times the strength of what I thought it was going to be. But also, I mean, I guess there was it was also the fact that like I was in a new city. I hadn't really slept the night before. I'd flown that morning, so I was tired. Just a whole bunch of kind of stuff happened. But what did you say the dosage was again, Austin? So you asked for how much and you got how much?
It was, so I asked for like 5% THC and a couple percent like CBD, but he ended up selling me, it was a 15 or 16% THC roll. Okay. And I should have realized it was bad only because it had Cheech and Chong on it. So if I would have realized that, I would probably have put it down.
Yeah, they won't put their names on anything under 10%. Like, oh my lord! And so and when you were smoking it, because I remember for me that when I smoked that joint, like it was it was strong, but I think I didn't realize how strong it was until I was a good few drags into it, and I was like, oh, hang on, like should I probably have taken like one and see what happened, which is kind of, what I definitely should have done. But you just kind of presumed it was like a very low strength. And you took a couple of hits, and then you were like, oh wow, this is stronger than I anticipated. Is that correct?
Yes. And since I thought it was partial CBD, I don't know. I don't know why. I guess I just got too much in the experience of Vegas, and I started smoking it like a cigarette, which was something I shouldn't have done, because it was so bad after that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as well, though, because I mean, I've because prior to, for me as well, prior to Amsterdam, like, I mean, I would have, being at house parties and stuff when you're a kid, like, and people are like, handing around or like passing around a joint, but the joint is like, it's like very kind of low grade hash, like, and it's just and people kind of are smoking it like a cigarette. It's just like very quickly passed on or whatever, and I think because I was used to that, I was like, well, I do this. That's what I'll do with this as well. But did anybody else? Was anybody else smoking it? Austin as well, or was anybody else with you smoking?
My girlfriend was smoking it with me.
Okay.
And she smokes weed. We call her smoke dog sometimes, because she can smoke intense amounts of marijuana and be perfectly fine. And I'm like, how do you do it? Like, oh, bless her heart. She can smoke.
So she was smoking as well, but she was okay.
Yeah, she was fine. I'm like, babe, are you high? No, I'm fine. What? How are you not high right now? I'm freaking out. Like, it was so weird.
Yeah,
it felt like it just felt like a dream, or I would say a dream, but it felt like a nightmare.
Absolutely.
It was so bad. It was so bad.
There was a friend of mine who was there with me that time in Amsterdam as well, and he was smoking too, and he was fine. I mean, he was high, but like he wasn't panicking like I was, and the fact that he wasn't panicking made me panic more, because I was like, well, obviously I'm having some sort of like medical reaction to this, because like I'm going to fall over and die, like, and you're walking around the streets of Amsterdam, you're fine, like, I mean, there's something very, very wrong, like,
Yes.
Yeah, but when you said something like my whole life changed after hitting that joint, I just, I still like can remember that so clearly, and just like, and for like the 2 years that I had DP and DR afterwards, like I kept thinking that, I was like, why did I do that, like, but then you can't. Yes. I don't know, it feels like it makes sense, but what I always say to people now is like, that I speak to people regularly who have developed DP and DR, who have never touched a drug in their lives. Maybe they've never even drank in their lives, but a panic attack sets off DP and DR. So it's not about the trick. It's not about what like set off the anxiety. It's about the anxiety itself. It's about the panic attack, and it's a fool's game to kind of start blaming yourself for doing something that you thought was like completely fine and completely safe. Like, it's not it doesn't help to play the blame game, certainly with yourself. That's so interesting what you said, Austin, about the app, like, because isn't it, it's like the same thing that like so many people experience, is that when they find out what the condition is, and then they go on the forums, and then they say, well, there's people who've had this for years, and they go, well, that's it. Like, how I've had this for like 2 weeks. How on earth am I going to manage this for like years? But very interesting that like it was like an app, like, or a horoscope type app that kind of like did the same thing for you.
Yes.
And Austin, was it like did you how did you first come across the term depersonalization? I mean, I presume it wasn't specifically my channel, but maybe were you kind of Googling the symptoms, or did you find it, or maybe did the doctor mention it, or how did you come across the term?
So I Googled it, and
Okay.
after from Googling it, it was giving me DPDR, and then I was like, okay. So I went on YouTube and Googled or YouTube DPDR, and then your page popped up, and then like I watched a couple of videos, and then I was like, man, I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna give this guy a chance. So I watched your video. I'm like, he makes a lot of sense. Like yours, excuse me, your videos were pretty much, and I'm not just saying this because I'm on the phone with you, but your videos were the best ones out of all the other videos because you broke it down so much to the point where it just, because I sometimes I can find myself as being a little slow and I don't really get certain things, but I feel like when you explained it I instantly got it and I just instantly knew what it was pretty much.
That's great to hear. I'm so glad that the channel is helpful. Something you mentioned as well, Austin, that really kind of hit me hard as well was saying you felt weak as a man,
Mhm.
or kind of how you were in your relationship. I mean, certainly for me, I because I for me I same thing to me. I stopped working. I moved home with my parents. I stopped all of my plans, travel plans, college plans, everything stopped. And I can remember I just had this like awful view of myself, and I was really ashamed. And I just thought, like, you're like 25 years old, like this, and you're finished, you got your bachelor's degree, you're supposed to be
Mhm.
out now chasing your career, and now that has stopped. Like, and I don't know why it stopped. I don't feel like I deserve it. It feels horrendously unfair. But
Mhm.
but just thinking, like, I'm back in with my parents, like, and I don't know how long this is going to last. And I can't, and the main thing was, like, I can't do anything for myself anymore. I can't drive my car. I can't I certainly can't, like, go on a road trip with my friends, or like, that's all gone. That's all gone.
Mhm.
And I yeah, I felt so kind of disappointed with myself and confused with the with the situation. Um and Can you mentioned a couple of them, Austin, but can you tell us specifically more about, like, what about the symptoms you were experiencing on a day-to-day basis?
It was more or less just a state of panic all the time. Like I would focus on the world around me, and I would just focus on the feeling that it just didn't feel right. Like everything was all blurry. It felt like there was a haze over my eyes, and I would step outside either to like get another car and bring it into my bay. And like I said, it was wintertime. Everything was all dark, gloomy, gray, snow on the ground. And I just, I would always just lose it. I would just lose it and looking back, like, I don't know why I would just, you know, lose it like that. Because it was really intense. Um, but it was mostly just that the panic and the cloudy vision and the brain fog and the memory loss as well. That was pretty much my top four symptoms I've experienced during my time with DP and DR.
Yeah, yeah. It's something you mentioned. I remember in an email that you sent at one point, Austin, and you mentioned earlier here as well, but going to, or the vision issues in particular, and you said you went to an optometrist and
Mhm.
got tests done. What was the visual aspect of it like for you?
Um, I mean, so I've always known I had a stigmatism in my left eye, but when I went there, like, yeah, everything seems normal. I don't see, you can see perfectly fine. I'm like, no, I can't. Like, there's this film over my eyes. It felt like someone put saran wrap over my face.
Yeah.
So, and they're like, no, I think you're just thinking too much. I'm like, no, I'm not. And they even prescribed me glasses, but it seemed like the glasses didn't help. I'm like, what the heck? You know?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I got all I got the battery of tests done as well. I got it tested for like eye diseases as well. And of course they found nothing. There's nothing wrong. Like, and it was like, well, it must be my prescription. No, prescription was fine. So then and then instead of kind of saying to myself, well, that's a good thing, I started thinking, well, there's something wrong with like my brain that they can't see from these tests. So I've got something wrong with like the visual cortex of my brain that they can't see. Like, 100% sure, 100% sure. um, and yeah, and something as well you mentioned, Austin, that I meant to say was the experience of like speaking to your doctor, and the doctor saying like this sounds like anxiety, and and reacting with no, this isn't anxiety, like this can't be, because this is affecting my vision and my memory, and anxiety doesn't do that. This is different. This has to be different. Like, um the thing is that it's exactly what anxiety does. It's a different level of anxiety to our typical frame of reference for anxiety, which is like the anxiety we have going to a college exam or something. This is like it's like fight or flight anxiety. So it actually has more kind of like distinct physical and mental effects. One of which is like total inability to focus, which we then interpret as being memory issues, or pupil dilation and hyper awareness of your peripheral vision, which we interpret then as like having terrible visual problems. So yeah, it's such a common experience. It's such a frustrating experience. Out of curiosity, did you ever speak again to the weed shop who sold you the Cheech and Chong's?
I have not. I thought about leaving him. I wouldn't say death threats, but just calling him and just tell him I'm going to sue you for what I'm experiencing right now. That's it. But no, I never got around to it. I thought to myself, maybe it wasn't his fault. Maybe it was an accident. So just like everyone makes mistakes.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Like it's that thing of like, he literally just like, it's the same thing's giving you the wrong change. Like, it's a very, very, very simple mistake. I went back to the cafe what I was on, and said, I was like, what did you give me? And and I think I'm mortified thinking about it now, because my buddy was with me, and my buddy was like, John, just let it go, it's okay. But I'm sure that like you're dealing with those situations all the time. To go to a very different topic, in the whole experience of it, Austin, what would have been your lowest point? Is there a particular kind of instance or time or thought that you can remember?
When I lost a couple people in my family. I know I lost my stepmom due to cancer, and then my aunt, she just got real sick and she passed. And like after that, um, it felt like everything just. It felt like I went back to stage one, because I would constantly think about death after that. And I'm like, well, where are they now? Like I didn't know what to think at that point. It was really hard for me. Um, I I didn't know what to do after that. Um, yeah, it was pretty bad.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that, man. That's tough. Um, and presumably you were kind of you were doing all the kind of the social things that are part of like losing a family member. You know, you do have to be social and you have to attend things, which I can only imagine must have been quite difficult going through
Yeah,
anxiety and DP and DR.
it was. And what set me off the most was going to the wake and just seeing the body in the coffin. And I think that's what really freaked me out the most. And I just lost it again. Because I didn't know what to think after that. I started like contemplating, you know, death, and it was just on my mind, and I just felt like the picture was just stuck in my head for a long time. Um, and until like I think just after everything with your book and everything just really helped me just relax. And when you're talking about when you get that thought, just hurry up, distract yourself. And that's what really helped me the most, because it automatically it trained my brain to automatically think about something else rather than what I've experienced. um, I know when I was in the military, I've experienced a lot of things, but it felt like I didn't get PTSD from it. And I felt like I would take that experience over this whole DPDR experience, my experience. I would take that over that, because I don't know, like, why I would experience more with DPDR than what I've experienced in the military, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Where were you on tour again, Austin, in the military?
Well, I was in Kuwait and South Korea.
Okay. um, yeah, I can imagine this. The I sometimes kind of wonder, are there kind of like commonalities in how we react to kind of different situations, because, and like, speaking as somebody who's never been near combat or anything like that, so but with depersonalization, derealization, it's essentially a reaction to what your brain thinks is a life or death situation. So
Mm.
your brain reacts as if you were, getting chased by a grizzly bear, or you're in a, like, what could potentially be a fatal car accident or something, or I presume a combat situation,
Mm.
but the brain, like, when you have a really bad drug experience, the brain doesn't know how to distinguish between those two things, even though with the drug experience, it's frightening, but you're not in any danger. You're simply not, and the drug will pass. But the brain reacts in the same way. And ultimately we kind of experience a lot of the same symptoms. So it's very interesting to hear you speak about, like, how you would have reacted in combat situations where you actually, your life would have been at risk, I suppose, and being in a situation where your life wasn't at risk at all, but the experience of it was terrifying.
Yes, and that was very weird to me. And thinking back, I think maybe it was just because maybe the adrenaline rush or this and that really just kind of blocked those transceptors in my brain to the point where I could, fight on without getting anxiety or panic. Um, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Did you find Austin, and just something I was thinking about earlier was that, like, I presume in the military, you like, there's such a strong sense of discipline and self-discipline instilled in you from day one. I can only presume. And I wonder, does that, having that kind of like that sense of discipline, and that, I guess, just that ability to depend upon yourself, would that potentially help in terms of recovery? Because a lot of the recovery process with all anxiety-based conditions is being very disciplined with where you place your focus and not researching it. For example, I wonder, for you with a military background, were you more able to make that change and just be like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not thinking like this anymore?
Yes and no. There were certain things that I did, but when it came to like the research and the condition and stuff, like at first I thought that it wouldn't matter about researching the condition until I did it. And I found this one forum. This guy was talking about how he had it for 10 plus years. And at that point, like, I'm like, yep, I'm done researching the condition, because it had this very intense impact on my brain, the way I reacted at times.
Yeah, absolutely. And it feels so strange to not do that. It feels so strange to not go and research it when you have all these, like, basically like endless avenues of research available to you on your phone or on your computer, and you can keep scratching that itch indefinitely. And it feels so strange to have this thought that feels like a literal emergency, and to respond to it by not going and researching it, and not going and seeing, does somebody else have that exact symptom, that exact thought? But that's what's necessary. It's one of the steps that is necessary for recovery. So Austin, when you started to see those changes, and you started to kind of, your recovery began, what did that feel like, and what changes did you start to see happening?
It just felt amazing. I felt like I was starting to get back to normal. Like, I would walk outside and just feel happy. Like, I would look up at the sky and I would smile and like look up at the clouds. Like, I felt like, from the point where I stepped into when I smoked that joint, stepped into the other dimension, and then I stepped out back into normal reality. It felt like, I don't know, like a rush of serotonin just filled my body, and I could just smile again. Like I was saying, I could just walk outside and do things like I normally did before I had the condition, and it felt wonderful. I don't know how to really explain it from there.
And was it a kind of a fast process, Austin, or did it happen over kind of like weeks and months?
It was more or less weeks and months, only because of I did have some minor setbacks with the like some of the things, because I was a big soda drinker and I loved coffee, and there was some point that I would drink coffee and it would trigger my DPDR. And at one point where I did drink coffee and I just felt awake, and it was kind of hard to get away from the caffeine and everything else. I know during my recovery, I did have I mean, I'm gonna say this because we're both adults here. I did have a kind of a pornography type addiction, only because I felt like during the whole, I'm trying to keep this very appropriate as possible, but the whole climax, I felt like it was the only time I felt back to normal with all that surge of dopamine. I felt like it was the only time I was back to normal. But I think those were the only two things that really it was really hard to stay away from was the caffeine and the pornography. But once I jumped over those hurdles, it was just all rainbows and pots of gold. Uh, and after that,
Yeah, yeah. That's great to hear. The pornography thing is it's something I like people mention to me kind of often enough, actually, as I mean, it's as an addiction that happens in general. It's very, very common. But also I think in particular in the context of experiencing DPDR and anxiety all of a sudden. And for you and like for me, I was 25 when it happened. And like, I'm a young man, I'm out the world, I'm meeting girls, I'm having a good time, and then that stops. That's all stopped. And you're living with your parents and you can't do anything. You can't do anything. So what do you do? Like, you kind of have to kind of express yourself some way. And of course, what do you turn to? Like, I mean, pornography, of course, like, and it can be a difficult thing to it's a very difficult habit to kick, like, and especially, and it also, it certainly kind of it just kind of drains you of energy as well, and drains you like the motivation to go out and socialize and meet people as well. So it just becomes this kind of like very negative feedback loop. And I think it's a much more common kind of aspect of just especially anxiety, where you and I guess this probably goes for most, if not all, forms of anxiety, but anxiety where you become kind of reclusive, like, and kind of and shut in, right? Because if you're too terrified to go outside because because the sky is too frightening for you, and you're staying inside, but you've got an internet connection, it's like so common for these type of addictions to happen. But well done for kicking it, like, and it is, and it's and on the other side of it, it's a great, if you can kick it, it gives you great kind of motivation and discipline to start socializing again, because you're just kind of like pointing that energy in a different direction, So this a very common question I get asked, Austin, is for people who are going through it, they ask, when I recover, is getting back to normal actually getting back to normal? Is it really, though? What do you think?
Yes and no. Only because when you're going through the DPDR, you're still the same person you've always were. And I know depersonalization, derealization could trick your mind to make you feel like you're not normal. But once you get out of it, and you will get out of it, but once you get out of it, you'll feel a difference, but you'll still feel like the same person you've always was.
Yeah,
But,
it's something I often say to people is like when you go into, or when you experience anxiety in DP and DR, you really feel like you have fundamentally changed. Like there's something inside you is now different from what it was beforehand. And then when you look at photos of yourself, old photos, you're like, don't recognize that person, don't recognize that smile, that's sociable person. Nah, that's all gone. And if that person's gone, how can I ever get back there? Or how can I ever get back to being that person? But what you realize in the recovery process is that that's not what happens at all. It's like you are exactly the same. You haven't changed at all. All that's happened is that for a period of time, this like a filter of anxiety has appeared, and it's there to protect you. It's just happening at the wrong time, but there's no danger happening around you. So you start to focus that anxiety on yourself and your environment and your thoughts. And as you recover, that filter of anxiety fades away and stops, and you realize that I am completely back to normal. I was terrified that like I'd never be able to enjoy films again, because I love film. I work in film. I'm a total film nerd. And like, to have that taken away from me, I was just like, what? Like, how could that have happened? But what I realized as I recovered was that like that was all fine. There was nothing wrong with your ability to enjoy films. It's just that when you're in fight or flight response, your brain completely deprioritizes relaxing and watching a film. But fortunately, as you recover, you get back to being a total nerd again.
Yes. And it always like I'm a big film nerd myself too. Like I love the Fast and Furious series, or
Nice.
and Need for Speed, and I felt like it always brought me back to normal. It always felt like I and it only probably because the adrenaline rush and everything else, serotonin. But I would always love watching those movies.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a lovely thing to have films that you like, back to front, like every
Yes.
shot in them,
Mhm.
and they feel familiar. And there's movies like that you can come back to and just watch. Like, I mean, I could watch Jurassic Park, the first one, like
Mhm.
once, like a couple of times a year, and never get sick of it ever. And I
Uh-huh.
enjoy it more more as I grow older. Um, and again, like just like if someone told me like that there's a condition out there that if you get it, you won't be able to enjoy Jurassic Park, I'd be like, that doesn't make sense. That can't be right. And then but that's exactly what it felt like. Um, but again, as you recover and you understand like that it wasn't that you aren't able to enjoy Jurassic Park or Fast and the Furious, it's just that
Mhm.
when your anxiety levels are higher than normal and your brain is essentially saying, are you in danger? Are you sure you're not in danger? You might be in danger. Then it's just
Mhm.
hard to focus on that movie. But nothing has changed. Your ability to enjoy these things is exactly the same. It's untouched. It's absolutely fine. And as you recover and all these symptoms fade away and stop, you just put on the movie and you go, oh, yeah, this is great. This is a great film. Which is your
Yes.
favorite Fast and the Furious, actually?
It would probably be Tokyo Drift. I kind of like some of these newer ones. I mean, they're good, but it's not much driving and racing than the early 2000s. That's what I dislike about it. The way
Yeah.
they went with it, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of them, but the ones I've seen I've always enjoyed. But I must sit down because they're just a lot, like, they're supposed to get better as time goes on. Like
Mhm.
the newer ones, I know they're probably quite different from like the first two that are kind of specifically
Mhm.
about like racing. They've turned into like bank
Mhm.
heists, like driving off buildings and stuff like. But yeah, I
Yep.
must check out more of them. Austin, how is the DP manual helpful in your recovery?
It's been great. Like I've read your book two or three times already, and because like I have ADHD as well, so it's kind of hard for me to read. So I've felt that listening to the audiobook and reading it at the same time really helped me with my recovery process,
Hmm.
because I could um, hold in and obtain the information more than usual. But I think from being in my military perspective of it, I was very used to, do this at this time, this time, a schedule. And I felt like the DPDR, the manual really, you know, told me what to do, what not to do. And I feel like I could relate to it more with the whole schedule thing.
Yeah, yeah. Just out of curiosity, Austin, so do you still live a kind of like a militaristic lifestyle in terms of your daily routine? So do you have like an alarm in the morning and you're up and you're kind of doing like, do you have a strict kind of like layout for your day, or is that kind of in the past?
I mean, some days, but most of the time it's kind of in the past. Like I don't want to fully, I guess, rip away my military past of, you know, all the things I did do, the discipline and everything. Um, but sometimes I'm like, man, I'm not in the military anymore. Screw this. And then I sleep an extra 2 hours and eat what I want. But other times, like I'm very disciplined, go to the gym and work out, get a pump in and stuff, you know, so I can stay in good health.
That's great. That's great. And how is work going for you?
Oh, it's going great. Like I love it. I mean, there's times where, you know, I still got to deal with my coworkers, but other than that, like I love it. It's great. You know, I'm finally getting back into my passion and doing it in a way that I can enjoy. You know, DPDR free, anxiety
Yeah.
free.
Absolutely. Anxiety free, DPDR free. Um, so Austin, for people who might be watching this, and there's probably a few of them who've gone through something similar to what you would have experienced in Las Vegas. People who might be a couple of days into it or a couple of weeks into it, and who would be in the same position that you were and that I was back in Amsterdam as well. What advice would you have for people going through that?
Um, you will get better. I know that there's times that, you know, your mind can play tricks on you that you're gonna be stuck like this forever. None of that. That's bull crap. You'll get to feeling normal and feeling like yourself as, you know, in no amount of time. Like you'll be a-okay. I promise you that. And, you know, just know that you are strong and you are worth it and you can get through anything. Um, and I had to tell myself that all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. You're strong. You're worth it. You can get through anything. That's excellent advice. Austin, it has been so lovely speaking with you, man. I really, really appreciate your time. And I know there's going to be people watching this who will find your story inspirational, and they'll absolutely connect to your message and to what you've been through. So thank you so much for being with us on the channel today. And
Yes,
enjoy your life post recovery. Enjoy the car business. Enjoy the Fast and the Furious movies. And yeah, keep up the good work, man. It was so lovely having you on the channel. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure for sure.
Yeah, thank you. Take care, man. Bye
Yes,
bye.
sir. Bye bye.